It's a wild and wonderful Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. We're going to talk about pros and cons of the new look offense. Damichael Cole and I are here together as well to give you our thoughts on the NBA GM survey coming out, what happened with the Grizzlies in the survey. Not a ton, but enough to talk a little bit about on this edition of the show. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for being with us here on this edition of Locked On Grizzlies. And it's always nice when I'm able to say us, because that means Damichael Cole of the Memphis Commercial Appeal is with us, my co-host, tremendous beat writer covering the Memphis Grizzlies for the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Happy to have Damichael with me. Happy to have you guys with us, as always. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with a $200 bonus bet guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Damichael, I know you check every day just like me. We're about 20 subscribers away now from 4,000 on YouTube. So excited for that. But make sure you're subscribing.
Joe, I said let's get there at the end of the week. By the end of the week. Let's get it done.
You're throwing down the gauntlet. I like that, partner. Let's spread the good news that is Locked On Grizzlies. Get us over 4,000 by Friday, or the end of the Friday work day, so to speak. That sounds like a good, realistic goal for us, buddy. Make sure you're subscribing on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all the audio platforms as well, and make sure you're being an everydayer for the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Damichael, it's great to have you back. Ja Morant chose to scare us a little bit. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the show yesterday, but I was a little bit mad. I was a little bit frustrated.
You were.
Not necessarily with Ja himself, because I feel like it's very established that Ja is going to be Ja at this stage. But, sometimes somebody just needs to step in and say, Ja Morant, you don't need to play in this BS preseason game. Doesn't need to happen anymore. Please just get out of the game and don't get hurt. But there were some other things that Ja did that I know that you were both excited about and not excited about with regard to this new look offense that has really been a focal point for Grizzlies fans in the lead up to the start of the season. We saw our first kind of taste of that. We got our first taste of that in the preseason win against the Dallas Mavericks. I didn't really talk about it on yesterday's show because I thought it would be a good opportunity for you and I to kind of riff off of one another. I think some of our best stuff here on the podcast happens when we're just kind of talking through thoughts that we have about stuff like this. So we're going to do that exact thing over the next couple of segments here, looking at the Grizzlies offense. We're going to start with positives because I do think that one of the positives of this offense, at least for me, and I think ironically you might bring it up as a negative here later on in the show, is
stop trying to spoil the people.
You're right. I need to stop killing the lead. I liked how they were trying to initiate offense with more people, and that meant Ja Morant was off the ball more, and I could see why that maybe would be frustrating to some. But as I said on X when you and I talked a little bit on social media about it, variety is the spice of life. And I've been saying for years, when it's closing time in a basketball game and you have a Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant pick and roll at the top, and nobody expects Morant to pass it, you know what's coming. Sometimes, like against the New Orleans Pelicans, that might work. A majority of the time, a defense is going to close on that, and Ja's not going to hit that shot. I'd like to find ways to get Morant in different angles and different cutting spaces into the basket. I thought it was a good step forward in that direction. That was my biggest positive from the early offensive returns. I liked the motions that they added. I liked how different guys were putting the ball in different places and having different roles, not because they have to due to injury, but because they are using what was utilized during that time period and applying it in a new way. That was exciting. Because, again, variety is the spice of life. It makes you less predictable as an offense.
I like that saying. Variety is the spice of life. I'm going to riff off that a little bit. Before I get to my point about the biggest positive, I just want to point out the fact that one thing, the big overlying thing here is the offense did look different. So before we get into the positives and the negatives of this thing, I will give Taylor Jenkins a little bit of credit. I'm not going to pat him on the back too much here, but just a little bit of credit for at least presenting a different product. Because you remember last season, we were hearing about the first gear, second gear, third gear, and all those things they got on the floor. It was like,
never manifested.
It didn't, even early on in the season, it didn't look really that much different, even when, you had Marcus Smart, and there were other guys out with all that. But anyways, even when Ja was playing, like, they looked similar to the last two teams of the past, which weren't bad offenses overall, but they weren't good playoff offenses. So with that being said, this new offense did look different. And now I'll get into my positive with that saying. You say a variety is the spice of life. And I'm going to riff off that and say the ball movement was really good. And, we'll talk about the potential concerns a little bit later, the possible concerns or whatever the case. But at the end of the day, this was ball movement. This was basketball 101. Guys weren't just passing the ball and swinging it around the perimeter. Guys were passing the ball, relocating, getting to different spots, spacing, and it was really good basketball. You saw high screen pick and rolls, but you saw guys it wasn't just Desmond Bain standing in the corner, this guy standing in the corner. Guys would relocate, which puts pressure on the defense, and the defense can't just say, hey, I'm watching the ball, because now you get called ball watching, somebody's going to cut behind your back, 2 points. We saw several moments where guys cut. We saw a lot of activity. And what I saw, and again, this is a super, super early tape, so I'm just going off that first game. We'll revisit, at the end of the preseason. But based off the way that the ball moved in that first game, sure, they're going to play different defenses, and we'll see how they adjust. But based off what I saw in the first game, that's an offense that could be top 10 in the NBA in assists, and potentially top 5 if that's the caliber of ball movement we're talking from a day-to-day standpoint. Yeah, you're going to have Ja Morant, dribble a couple times every now and then. But for standpoint, like, Joe, it looked like the ball was hot or something. Like, guys, get this out of my hand. Like, ooh, like they were, but it was crisp, and everyone knew where they were going. There were a couple times, guys threw it away, thinking other guys were going to be here and little things like that. But Taylor Jenkins talked about the fact that, remember, before the episode we recorded before the game, I talked about the fact that it wasn't necessarily about them running a bunch of different plays. It's just the fact that guys are making quick decisions, and that's what we saw. We talk about the idea of 0.5 basketball. That's actually something that Taylor Jenkins emphasized before, but the pace was there. I mean, they were getting up and down. Like, it was track meet, like, out there. I know you talked about Zach Edey huffing and puffing a little bit in the last episode.
Which was surprising, because we weren't necessarily as concerned about his conditioning, but NBA speed is different than Purdue speed.
And not just NBA speed, this warp speed that the Grizzlies, like, pace has been Taylor Jenkins' word. He has these 3 Ps, but he's always started with pace. We know with Ja Morant, Desmond Bain, you got Marcus Smart. Like, Marcus Smart isn't as quick end to end up the floor as those dudes, but he will advance the ball really quick. Ja Morant and Desmond Bain, they will get the ball off the glass and go. So what you're seeing is, one, an offense that's definitely going to be somewhere near the top of the league in transition scoring. And then 2, if everything materializes, and of course, we're talking about our first look at this thing, but you would like to think over the course of the season, over the course of some games, guys are going to get a better idea for where certain players are going to be. And the way that they're moving the basketball right now, that in the past, there were so many, especially in the playoffs. That's what comes to mind first. A lot of times we see high pick and roll with the Grizzlies, and guys are just moving off of the guy with the basketball. A lot of kick it out. Ja Morant setting everything up. Marcus Smart was setting things up last season, which didn't work because that's not Marcus Smart's. I mean, he's a great passer, but you're talking to stagnant, standing in the corner shooters and things like that. That's not what I want him to do. I want him passing to cutters. I want him passing to guys that are moving off of the ball. That's what we saw in this game, and that can lead to more efficient offense going forward.
And more malleable offense, an offense that can adjust and adapt and react to whatever the defense is trying to throw at it. Again, that variety. I'm really interested in seeing how that continues to grow. You want to utilize all of these skills that are being developed in these practices, in these games from last season, when Jaren Jackson Jr. is back in the fold, and his ability to pass, which has improved dramatically over the last 12 months. I can't wait to see
that too. Yeah,
that's going to be a fun addition. No disrespect to Santi Aldama, who I thought did some good things in the game on Monday night. It is going to be good to see Jaren in that role and Santi in that reserve spot. I think that's going to be a better fit for what they're trying to do. Let Damichael and I know in the comments how you guys are feeling. Hit us up on X at DeMichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Positives about this Grizzlies offense. Again, one preseason game in, literally the smallest of sample sizes. But hey, let's have some fun, right? A good opportunity to kind of talk about some good things that we saw against the Mavericks. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's a time of year to be scared, partner. Damichael, what are some things that scare you or something that scares you?
I always go back to sports. And right now, my Packers, I'm really high on them. And I just got a scare with Jordan Love missing some time. But you know what scared me? The NFC North right now is the best division in football. If we get to the playoffs and lose to any of those scrubs, I might go missing for a couple of days, Joe. I just might.
Well, the good thing about this time of year is Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us. But what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts or divisions in the NFL? Sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place, but it's holding ourselves back. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. So we were positive there at the first part of the show. There were some things to be excited about with that new Grizzlies offense. There's some stuff that makes me nervous, and I want to reiterate what I said a moment ago. We literally have one preseason game to base this off of. So there's going to be a much larger sample size down the road. But we're still analyzing
first reaction,
earliest returns. And you probably know where I'm going to go with this, partner, because I am somebody – I have a football background, right?
Yep.
And while basketball is very different from football, to me, possession matters.
Winning that turnover margin, right?
You can't score without the basketball. Just like you can't, well, in theory you can in football, but you're forcing a turnover if you're scoring that way in football. So that turnover margin is significant. Not as big of a deal in basketball, openly acknowledging that. However, the Memphis Grizzlies had 23 turnovers against the Dallas Mavericks. That number is far too high. No matter how much ball movement is happening, no matter how excited I am about John Morant being off the ball a little bit, which, again, not to kill the lead, I have a feeling you're going to talk a little bit about that here momentarily, Michael, and maybe trying to counter my own point with that. I think that turnover number is concerning. I'm sure it'll go down as they get more comfortable, but this offense does not have the firepower. They do not have the scoring, especially from beyond the arc, to be able to make up for losing those many scoring chances. No defense is going to overcome that in their own way. They have to protect the ball better as they get more comfortable offensively.
Yeah, you've already gave the people an idea of what I'm going to talk about here, but I'm going to riff off of what you just said. You talked about the turnovers, and you know why the turnover numbers are so high? Because way too many people had their hands, as I like to describe it, in the cookie jar.
People that are not John Morant.
No.
Right.
No, John Morant's hand stays in the cookie jar, and everybody else, you reach in there every now and then, you get you a cookie out. No, it was like everybody was getting the same amount of cookies. So the point that I'm getting to here is, here's where I think my concern is the Grizzlies need to find that happy medium. I am not saying, John Morant, every single possession, dribble, the old Grizzlies offense. That's not going to work. That's not what I'm saying. But there has to be a happy medium. At the end of the day, basketball is common sense. I always say we can't overthink things. And the simplest idea here and the most common sense part of this is when the ball is in Ja Morant's hands, the Grizzlies are a better team. Point blank, period. We saw last season without Ja Morant, not so good. When Ja Morant played, 6-3, 9 games, and completely different looking team. So with that being said, you have to find this happy medium. What I saw in that last game was a lot of guys had their hands in the cookie jars. Desmond Bane was running a lot of offense. Marcus Smart, definitely Marcus Smart more so than Bane. And then the result of that was Marcus Smart, 3 turnovers. Santi Aldama had a couple. Zach Edey had 3 turnovers. Desmond Bane had 2. Ja had 2 as well. But I think that number gets trimmed a little bit if you put the ball in Ja Morant's hands a little bit more and let him run the show. Of course, now you want to get into your pace, and when you get into your pace, you're not really trying to get the ball to Ja Morant to kind of initiate the offense. If Desmond Bane is grabbing that board, you're going. So that's kind of my it's a concern simply because of the fact that this offense, I don't think they should overthink this thing. Like you want, again, like I said in the first thing, the ball's going to be moving, and that is great. But at the end of the day, the ball better touch John Morant's hands. I want to see him making most of the plays. I like a lot of these guys as second. Remember, that's what I was talking about before the season. I like these guys more as secondary playmakers. You can still move the ball to them in the offense, and then they make plays from secondary type of roles. What we saw was Marcus Smart in primary roles where John Morant was off the ball, and it worked at times. But I think that kind of contributes to those turnovers. But you just got to find that happy medium. I did not like how much the ball was out of John Morant's hands. If I'm saying, hey, you want to see the best version of the Grizzlies, John Morant's got to have the ball in his hands a little bit more, if you ask me.
For me, I want to see John Morant initiate offense in different ways. And I think that you and I are taking different means to get to the same end. There's a possibility that John Morant getting the ball in the corner and coming off of a screen and initiating offense that way, that creates a different angle that the defense has to honor. That creates a different lane and a different space for opposing squads.
That's going to be huge for the postseason.
Yeah. That matters a lot. And again, you can't predict where Morant is going to start offense. They were far too predictable in the past in terms of he's going to be at the top of the key and they're going to set a screen this way and they're going to do a short roll and the shooter's going to flash at the top. I'm not an NBA basketball coach. I've just played and watched a lot of basketball. I was able to tell what was going to happen. And I'm sure that the millionaires that actually do this for a living are going to be able to figure it out a lot faster than me. So I want to see them putting Morant in space and different spaces to initiate that offense. I'm agreeing with you. Marcus Smart should not be the lead point guard in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I knew I would get you with that.
In my opinion. But I think that you can get to those sets if you have the pace that they're trying to play with. You get a rebound, you get the ball across the halfway or the half court line 4 seconds into the shot clock. You have 20 seconds to initiate a set.
That's
John
another
Morant's
thing.
Coming off the basket. They're taking too much time to get into their offense. They have to find a way to start it sooner so that even though it looks like Morant is the secondary or tertiary creator, they're just starting their sets. It's almost like a false start or a fake cadence, right? Going on two. In football, it's a fake. You want them to think that a set is starting, but then Morant flashes, and he's the one that's actually initiating the offense. That's where that variety comes into play, and I worry that they're not able to get to those looks because they're trying to make Smart in particular and Bane and others something that they're not.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that, but in a different direction here, like that didn't look, and Taylor Jenkins has openly said, it's not going to be pretty in the early going. So I'm not trying to set the expectations too high here, but what we saw that wasn't pretty from the standpoint of the pace part. I think a lot of times in that game there was, I won't say out of control moments, but there just weren't smart shots. Like Desmond Bane early in that game, you remember he had the long rebound, he had the one-on-one, and Santi Aldama was trailing behind him. And all he had to do is slow play it up the court. You got a 2-on-1. You got Santi Aldama trailing behind you, and he pulls up while the other guy's standing on the rim for the three-pointer. And I'm just like, see, this is that pace stuff, right? This idea of pacement. I'm sure Taylor Jenkins probably wasn't a huge fan of that shot, especially with Santi trailing behind you, and you can get a 2-on-1. But I just think like there were several moments with this idea of pace where they were advancing the ball and it went out of bounds. Like that was some of the turnovers, just playing too fast. But I think that gets corrected in time. That's not a huge concern as much as the first point that I made.
Got to get John Morant involved in a variety of ways. I think that we can agree on that front both ways. And I want to stress one more time before we move on. This is literally the first preseason game. Right? They don't play again until tomorrow. There's opportunity for practice in the preseason that doesn't really exist once the regular season gets rolling. This is going to get better as time goes on. The concern is just making sure that we are articulating here in our, wonderful little corner of the internet that this new look offense, while it does look different, and Damichael made a great point earlier in the show, it was a lot of hype for not a lot of substance. This looks different. There's going to be growing pains. The hope is that they're clicking in March and April. that they have enough talent to be the 4, 5, 6 seed, whatever the case might be. And then once they hit March and they're getting ready for the playoffs, hopefully, they are starting to figure it out and getting this thing rolling in the right direction. Again, if you're worried about turnovers, if you're worried about Ja not touching the ball as much, or maybe you're worried about something else, let Damichael and I know either on X or in the comments below. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. It is a great time to get locked in with FanDuel. NFL fans in particular, continue starting your season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Maybe you get a hunch that one of the top 5 teams in the NFL, you heard me right, top 5 teams in the NFL, the Washington Commanders, they go into Baltimore to prove that they belong in those rankings against the Ravens. Maybe you want to check out that game. You're excited about it like I am. You want to look at the latest stats. You want to see live play-by-play and so much more. You can do all of that on the same exact page where you place your bets, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You get all of that at FanDuel.com. Once again, that is FanDuel.com. We'll leave the offense behind for now, partner. You're going to be flying solo the next couple of shows. Again, this busy time of year for me with football. So we'll leave some offensive fun for you to talk about in game previews and reviews and that sort of thing. The NBA GM survey came out recently, and we haven't had much of a chance to talk about it. To be honest with you, there's not a ton to discuss because that's Grizzlies related. The biggest
flying under the radar, right? Just where they want to be, right?
Kind of. I mean, they were the #1 clearly team among NBA GMs that thinks is going to have the best bounce back year, right? I think they had the Grizzlies.
That's an obvious one.
Yeah, that is pretty obvious. If they're healthy, they're not that bad, right? They just aren't. They're number 6, I think, was the way that the GMs ranked them, the way that the votes kind of worked out. And again, I think I have them 4th. I think you had them in that same kind of vicinity. The West is going to be so crowded that the difference between 4th and 6th seed might be a game or two. So that's not too much to write home about. I was intrigued, though, partner, by the glaring omission of Jaren Jackson Jr. on defensive ratings, Ja Morant in terms of being a rated point guard. It seems like Marcus Smart, or maybe even the legend of Marcus Smart, gets more of a shout out among NBA GMs than the current Memphis Grizzlies. Not a ton of love for these guys, except for Ja Morant having the biggest jump this season, whatever that means. He's already a superstar. I don't know what his next jump could be. Maybe
he won most improved already, right? He won the most improved.
Is he going to win most improved again? It's one of those weird things where I get it from the NBA GM perspective. It's hard to figure out what to make of this Grizzlies team. We talked about Amin Elhassan and Mark Stein, people that are pretty low on Memphis. And then you have other folks that have the Grizzlies as number 2, number 1 in the Western Conference. It feels like there's a variety of outcomes for this Grizzlies season, which makes them hard to predict. And the NBA GM survey kind of backs that up.
Yeah, I'll say there wasn't much too surprising, from the GM surveys and whatnot. But the Jaren Jackson Jr. thing stands out to me, Joe. And it stands out to me because if you look at this year's survey and you look at last year's survey, the one big difference is when Jaren Jackson Jr., I think he was voted the top interior defender. He was, I think, 35% of GMs,
something like that. A pretty high number.
Yeah, it was a really good number. This year, I think, like you said, Marcus Smart's name got mentioned. I think he didn't get mentioned on that one. He got mentioned in a different defensive category, like as a player who was mentioned. But the Jaren Jackson Jr., discourse is from a player who the previous 2 seasons went from first team all defense and then the following season won defense player of the year to the season that he had last year. I'm kind of puzzled by that. I'm kind of puzzled by that too. A couple of things, like there are some things that I wasn't too surprised about, like, seeing one, they didn't have Zach Edey winning rookie of the year. Did you see that?
They love Reed Shepherd. They love them some Reed Shepherd.
I get it, but look.
Is Reed Shepherd going to start for the Houston
We
Rockets?
should get our guy Jackson on here one day, because my thing with Houston is, look, they got too many. Like there's having young talent, but they don't have, like, it's not like the Thunder where you have a clear top. Like, we know Chet is a future all-star type guy, Jalen Williams, future all-star type guys. They got a bunch of guys who would be Robins, it feels like, at their best. And Reed Shepherd, is he going to get the minutes or the time that Zach Edey gets? I'm not feeling that one, Joe. Remember, John Morant said he's definitely rookie of the year, easily. And quite frankly, just to be honest with you, I want to see a few more games of preseason action of Zach Edey before I jump onto the same point, like to the level of John Morant, like the definitely point. But I still, at this point in time, I feel like Zach Edey would be my pick for rookie of the year. So here's where I'm rounding this thing up at. I think the Grizzlies front court is not getting a lot of credit. I don't think that this idea of this Jaren Jackson Jr. and Zach Edey pairing is scaring the NBA. Based on what we saw with the NBA GMs, we talked about the fact that Zach Edey is going to come here and he's going to make Jaren's job easier. I'm hoping those guys get at least one game of preseason action because with Zach Edey, right, of the fouls, for example, in that game, there were a couple of them. I feel like if Jaren Jackson Jr. was in the game, that would have been a helpful, especially like when he fouled Najee Marshall from behind and things like that. Like you let little things go, like when you got Jaren coming from the weak side. So I think Jaren's going to be very helpful for him, and he's going to be very helpful for Jaren Jackson Jr. So that stands out to me. I don't think the league is really high on the front court. I'm not surprised, like with Zach Edey, when they said they always do which rookies are going to be the best long term, like 5 years. Zach Edey's name wasn't even mentioned in that one, and that's not too surprising. It's the idea of Zach Edey is he's a guy who can produce right now. He's not really your future. The sky's the limit. He has so much untapped potential. You kind of have this idea of what he's going to be in the league. At least that's what the GMs think. So those were kind of some of my big takeaways, but I'm sticking with that. With the Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, just with the front court. If you would have asked me before, I would have thought those two dudes. I honestly, with the point guard position, we already know what it is at this point. And if you saw in camp in Nashville, I think the Grizzlies posted on YouTube and a couple people reported on it. But we were talking to John Morant, and one of the reporters, Joe Varden from The Athletic, asked John Morant, about being a future piece of Team USA. And Ja was very dismissive towards the question and basically said, you should go ask the star guys that question. And that's that chip. But that also goes to the point to the fact that, Ja feels like over the last year or so that, they don't think I'm a star anymore. They don't, or maybe, there is this whole idea, which I wholeheartedly believe in. A lot of star players, like from a weird psychology perspective, like to convince themselves that they're the underdogs to kind of have this big comeback type of feel and motivate themselves in a way. So, of course, that's part of, I think, the plan with y'all. Like, oh, yeah, they got Shea in front of me now. They got Ant in front of me now. They got this guy in front of me. But with all that being said, I wasn't too surprised with the point guard stuff because Josh just got to get back on the floor and prove it. And if he plays like the job of the past, well, guess what? He will be top 5 next year, and we won't even be talking about this. So there's that. The shooting guard stuff, Dez isn't there yet. Can he be? Yeah, but that doesn't really surprise me. But it's the front court. I definitely didn't expect Jaren's name at the top 5 power forward conversation necessarily, but I did expect to hear his name more defensively. Because even though his blocks number wasn't, he was still a very active defender, averaging over 1 steal and over 1 block per game. Like, he was still a very active defender. And then with Zach Edey, I don't know, the GMs, they had him second. Like, it's no sleeper, but Reed Shepherd over Zach Edey, I'm not convinced on that one at year 1.
Well, Reed Shepherd, thankfully, does not have to play the Oakland Grizzlies anymore. Right, so he doesn't have to worry about getting.
You're sticking with that one, Joe. You're sticking with that
by
one.
A mid-major team. Never before have I seen 2 lottery picks get beat by guys that were playing Division II or Division III basketball.
I wonder where our guys playing now. Goalkeeper.
That's a great question. We might have to do some research there. Probably not in the NBA, but I digress. I'm curious by the Reed Shepherd choice. I don't know how a 6th man is going to get the same level of opportunity. He feels like the trendy pick, and that's fine. Yeah. And again, he's a ball handler. He's a guard. That's sexier than a 7'4", 290-pound guy that does the Dougie in 2024.
Well, who you taking off the floor?
I'm with you. Like, are you taking Fred VanVleet? Are you taking a Thompson brother? Are you cutting
Jalen Green?
Jaden Green. Are you moving on from Dylan Brooks? Like, there's so many different pieces. I think it was a good pick for the Rockets. If
for
Shepherd
sure.
was there for Memphis at 9, I would have run to the podium to select him. So it's more so about fit than it is what Shepherd actually can do, as long as he's not playing against the Oakland Grizzlies. Let Damichael and I know how you guys feel about the GM survey. Do you feel slighted? Are you cool with how it played out for Memphis? Thankfully, here in a couple of weeks, the Grizzlies are going to be playing meaningful basketball games, and we'll start figuring out who is right and who is wrong about all this prognostication. Tomorrow, it's a game day preview episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael, you'll be flying solo. Anything beyond game preview stuff you think you might want to talk to the good folks about?
Yeah, the team will have a practice today, potentially. So I think we're gonna break down some of those things as well. More on a Ja Morant update. One thing I can say right now is he's good.
Everybody needs to chill out.
Yeah. Everyone take a chill pill, relax. This is not something that's regular season threatening. But at the same time, we'll get more of an update on just the little things. Is he going to play in the preseason again? If so, when? All those type of questions. So we'll talk about that in the next episode, in addition to previewing the game and just getting updates on Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. Last I heard, he was doing some one-on-0 things. So they're starting to slowly ramp him back up, and we'll see if at any point he's going to be available in the preseason.
Exciting times. Basketball is back, and they're building up toward opening night. It's good stuff, and make sure you're with us here on Locked On Grizzlies each and every time an episode comes out. Thank you for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing. Wherever you get podcasts, we're proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, literally anywhere you get a podcast, make sure you're making us your first listen, your first watch every time an episode drops. And now that this episode ends, as it ends, go check out Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Our good friend Josh Lloyd of Grady Dick joke fame. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Fantasy Basketball, all the amazing work that Josh does over there. I have a fantasy draft coming up. I'm certainly going to be turning into some episodes to get some sleeper ideas as I build my fantasy basketball team, and you should be doing the same as Locked On Grizzlies concludes. For Damichael, I'm Joe. We'll catch you back here tomorrow. Stay locked in. Take a chill pill. Relax. Ja Morant's going to be fine. Memphis Grizzlies basketball is back. What can you possibly be having to be upset about? See ya.